Welcome back to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast. Today on the show, Jemarl Paerata, a professional firefighter for the last 20 years that sort of through the COVID time period wanted to find himself through self-growth and self-development and then realized that there's more to it and himself and offering the world and stepped away from professional career of 20 years and started up and apologize if I get this wrong, the Te
Kaiārahi.
Yeah, I want to say that wrong.
Te Kaiārahi.
Yeah, a program which means to mentor and trying to improve yourself, the people around you, the community around you. You're also a very Piha local that grew up on the beach, a surfer. Your son's a professional surfer, and very close to what I've spoken about in a good few months is works with Dave Wood with the Calm Under Pressure program, which a lot of people know about in the news a lot around the UFC boys and keeping them calm and your world. So Jemarl, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to come in and share a little bit about what we're doing and how we're going about it.
Sorry for the butcher of the name. I know I had to joke each time we send a message. You always send me this amazing Maori ending or beginning, and I had to go to my wife and go, he does realize I'm South African, right? I don't understand this shit, but it's super cool and I love it. And then I said to you the one time, like, hey, dude, like you got send me the message, but send me the English conversion so then I can understand that and stuff. But it was super cool that you did that.
Yeah, Look, I've since I started my own learning, I got back into my te reo Maori and tikanga. So, you know, I feel like I'm still pretty young in that area, but I like to use as much as I can, and it's been a big part of me growing, and a big part of our program is te ao Māori and tikanga, and sharing those values and principles that te ao Māori has.
And just to our audience, all right, the te ao Māori is about everything living and not living. And everything in the universe is all interlinked fundamentally, right?
Pretty much, yeah. There's a whole lot of systems and we're all interconnected. And so, you know, if parts of one system aren't working, it affects the other parts. And so just speaking about that, I'm Ngāti Tuwharetoa and Ngāti Mutunga. So those are my iwi. You know, that's usually as Maori, we ask, where are you from? So there you go, Tuwharetoa and Ngāti Mutunga. So pleasure to be here.
Oh, awesome. Let's take a bit of a step back. And, you know, anyone that knows you a couple of years ago would have, you know, professional firefighter, Piha local, grew up on the beach. We've seen it quite a lot from a lot of the guests in the last few months about the West of Auckland. I'm getting quite a few West Auckland, Wairua, Piha local, Bethel's locals, right, yourself, Dave Wood, and a few other guests. And I've always had this view of how people that grow up around the water have such a different opinion and view of the world. And before we get into your story and everything else, I know you've grown up on a surfboard. Your son has grown up on surfboard, been professional surfer and stuff. What's your view about a person that grows up around the beach and how they feel to nature compared to someone that grows up in suburbia?
Oh, it's miles apart. And, you know, I actually wasn't brought up at Piha or on the beach. I was brought up in the middle of the North Island in a little place called Waikeria, where my father was a prison officer. So I spent the first part of my childhood in Waikeria, and then my parents shifted to Australia, and I started surfing when I was about 16. So up until that point, I played a lot of rugby, and, you know, every kid that starts playing rugby at 5 years old wants to be an All Black. So that was my dream. And that was the direction that I always kind of had myself heading in. At primary school, I saw a magazine with a guy at Pipeline, and I looked at it and I thought, I've got to do that. You know, something inside me just connected with that photo. And I was lucky enough when I moved to Australia to get a board and to get myself down to the beach. I saved up, got a secondhand board, and it was one of the best things that I've ever done. It's given me so much. It saved me surfing. And to have that connection. Now I can speak on behalf of my son because he was brought up at Piha and at the beach. And for him, he needed that. He needed that release of his energy, and he needed somewhere to put all of that energy that he had. So he's a pretty active young fella, and surfing in a lot of ways saved him as well. So nowadays, you know, back when I was younger, I had to surf all the time. Like, I didn't care. Like, I'd put anything off, and I'd walk to the beach and I'd do anything I could to surf. Nowadays, you know, and I wanted to be as good as I could possibly could.
Hey, everyone. Sorry for the interruption. Just a quick shout out from our sponsors.
My name is Kenyon Clark, and I'm the founder of the Duval Group. We are a large-scale property developer, and alongside our property development business, we also have our gym business based in Manukau and with new locations opening soon. We're passionate about serving our community, and we do that through the Duval Foundation, and I hope that we are able to be a voice of encouragement and inspiration for a whole new generation of entrepreneurs.
Let's get back to the show.
But nowadays, like, there's just walking down the beach is sometimes that's the best part of my surf.
Yeah.
And it's pretty spiritual, and you're connecting with all your fellow surfers and connecting with the ocean and getting to some amazing spots around the world. I can't say enough good things about surfing. It's and obviously with the popularity of it now, a lot of people who probably wouldn't have surfed in the past are taking it up. So I think we're truly blessed to have surfing in our lives. It's good for our well-being. When you're out there, obviously you're just thinking about being out there. So it's got a whole lot of really cool benefits.
Yeah, I've spoken about this before in the previous episodes, and I grew up around the beach as a lifeguard back in South Africa many years ago, and a lot more smaller than I am now, right? And I still appreciate the West Coast beaches in Auckland, New Zealand, the roughness of it and the true nature. But I've got this whole view that when you find yourself in Mother Nature, whether it's people that grow up at the beach or people that grown up in the bush, and you've been humbled by that, right? As any surfer, bodyboarder, even if you open a water swim, is once you've been humbled by Mother Nature, you've got a different appreciation to it, right? You can understand the power and the control, and that's why I always have this view that anyone that's finding themselves around that situation, so whether it's late in life at 16, they've picked up surfing, their understanding of the water is totally different. The appreciation of the water is totally different, and they've always got this link back to nature and to the earth. And a lot of what they're doing is back to that, is giving back, it is helping out. And it's almost in like this weird sense of like, if we could take a lot of the stress and the anxiety and the problems we have in the world and take all the people that suffer from them and go, cool, we're going to stick you on the beach for 3 months, not in Bali. We're going to stick you on the West Coast of beaches, and you're going to go and surf, and you're going to be part of that community for 3 months, and we're going to take you out and put you back in the world. Society would be so different.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you are connected with nature. We're looking at the weather maps and we're seeing what's going on. We see a big storm down in the South Island. We know in a couple of days it's going to be at our front doorstep. And it even gets to the extent where if a big swell comes up the West Coast, Fiji could be good in a couple of days. So I do feel as a surfer we're connected with nature, and yeah, it is we're actually truly blessed to have that and have that as part of our lives. And it keeps you fit, and you're out there surfing, and it's fun, and it doesn't feel like you're going to the gym or you're working out, even though I encourage that. But just getting out there and getting moving is, we're truly lucky to have that in our lives. I love it. I love it so much.
Awesome. So let's go back 2020 around there, right? 20-year firefighter, or close to 20 years in the fire, in that line, and you pretty much turned around and went from one side of the extreme to the other side, right? Talk me through that whole situation and how that triggered off.
Yeah, well, look, at the time I was going through some personal issues myself, and I had a marriage breakup about 10 years ago, and that was pretty difficult, and from the outside looking in, it looked like I was doing well, but internally I was kind of falling apart, and a lot of my relationships were falling apart. I was lucky enough to do a job share, so I was traveling around the world. So essentially I was running from my problems, and I was a heavy drinker. I used to drown my sorrows. I couldn't really communicate how I was feeling. I'd go away for 3 months, and I'd see my son, go to a few surf comps with him, support him, and then go on a bit of a bender. Come back to New Zealand, straight back on the trucks, 12-hour, 24-hour shifts, and back into that pretty stressful environment, and not getting a lot of sleep, still drinking heavily. And in 2020, with COVID and the shutdown of the world, essentially, I couldn't run anymore. Yeah. And so I was confronted with myself. And, because I couldn't deal with my emotions or how I was feeling, I just drowned them, And in the fire service, which, by the way, it's been an amazing part of my life, and I learned some amazing things there. But, even during that period when we'd have real traumatic incidents. I didn't know how to talk about it, and I wouldn't talk about it, you know, and I'd just put it to the back of my head and try and forget about it. And when you do that, sooner or later you run out of room.
Yeah.
And so I got to a point in 2020 where there was nowhere to run, and I hit rock bottom, and I got pretty dark. And yeah, in that moment where I couldn't run anymore and things were falling down around me, I had a vision of my son, and as a 3-year-old holding on to my pounamu and telling me that he loved me. And in that moment, I knew that I had to take responsibility for this stuff. You know, I couldn't run anymore. I knew that no one was coming to rescue me, to save me, and that I'd created a really negative reality for myself. And I knew that just like I'd created a negative one, I could create a positive one. But I had to take responsibility of it, drop all the resentment, the blame, all the stuff that was hounding me for years. Over time, I'd build up these patterns of behavior, these thought patterns, and I had to break it all down. And yeah, in that moment, I decided, like, I knew in the back of my head what was causing all of this, and it was the heavy drinking. And I'd come from a pretty, you know, binge culture, family drinks a lot, and I'd always just drown my sorrows. And I'd worked in the film industry in the past, so, you know, I just knew in the back of my head I had to stop because it wasn't serving me. And so I just thought, okay, I'll do one day. I did one day. I'll do 2 days. I'll do 3 days. I did 1 week, 2 weeks. And when you stop drinking, it's really confronting. You know, you're by your sober self now. You know, there's nowhere to hide.
No bravado.
No, and you're not going down to the same places you were frequently going. Or when you're drinking like I was, it consumes your thoughts, it consumes your money, you know, it consumes your energy. And so all of a sudden I had a bit of energy, I had a lot of time, and it was confronting as hell, you know, it was really difficult. So I knew that I couldn't just sit there and dwell. So I started learning, and I started learning about holistic health. I started learning about self-development, meditation. I started learning about te ao Maori, my tikanga, te reo Maori. And slowly I started feeling a bit better. I got into like holistic health, looking at nutrition, hydration, breathing, you know, all this really cool stuff. Where are your thoughts? And I started elevating everything. And honestly, within about 3 months, I noticed some changes. It was tough. You know, I censored everything that was coming into my mind, and I censored everything that was coming out of my mouth. And I started listening to podcasts like yours, and they saved me. I listened to people's stories, how they'd overcome adversity and built themselves back up. And at the time, it was really hard to listen to it. And, you know, a lot of the times, because I used to listen to them on the way to work, and a lot of the times they'd say things like, you're right where you need to be, you know, and that's tough when you're really struggling. So I'd drive to work and, you know, I'd cry because I was, it was a really tough time, but within myself, I could feel myself changing, and I could feel what they were saying. I used to listen to Jay Shetty a lot. And I just noticed a few little things were starting to brighten up for me, and it happened fairly fast. I got to a certain point after 3 months where I went, okay, I'm learning about all this self-development. I'm learning about all these different values and principles. And, you know, I went out under the full moon and said, guide me. You know, I believe in a higher power, you know, spirituality. I wanted to be guided to a better life. And I decided, okay, I'll surrender to all of these principles. Let's see what you got. Let's see where this takes me. Let's see if you're telling the truth. And, you know, a couple of years down the track, I can say it worked for me.
It's an interesting ride that people go on, right? One thing I want to go in, it is so true when you talk about when you step away from alcohol, or you take any sort of consumption or addiction, right? All of a sudden you have this realization of how much more you have than you thought, right? How much time you got, how much energy you got. Sometimes, of course, so problematically, how much more time you got to think, right? And then think about what you've done and all the rest of it. You know, I think back to my times that I went 5 years sober in my 20s because I'd find myself at the end of a bottle almost on a daily basis in my very early 20s. And I know vividly the exact moment I realized that I was consuming alcohol too much. And it had control of me in the sense of I was having a breakfast with my family at a restaurant, and they came and asked me at 7 a.m. or 7:38 a.m. They said, okay, what does everyone want to drink? And it was a orange juice, a coffee, and me was double vodka neat on the rocks at 7:30 in the morning. And I remember that vividly going, that's fine, you can laugh. I've got no issue with it. You could totally, look, there's nothing wrong. I can remember going, that's not normal, right? Yeah. Oranges, coffee, and I'm sitting there wanting to drink. And then, working through it. And it's so true what you said about all of a sudden then there's time and there's thoughts and then there's a realization and then, money, all the rest of it, but having to work through. And then the challenge people find themselves in is, all of a sudden you get more of what you didn't realize you had is what you do with that more, right? So a lot of people come out and sin, and it's like if you don't give yourself the inspiration, the motivation, or feed yourself that good stuff, you're going to see all of this and you might not like it. And that's why you find people come out the other side of trying to give up the booze or give up the alcohol, give up whatever their addiction is, right? Any forms of, sex, prostitution, all that sort of stuff. And they come out almost clean and go, well, I actually don't like this version of myself. I don't like what this clean is, but didn't realize that's the middle ground. There's still something further, right? And you said that how you were feeding yourself with the good stuff. Some of us, unfortunately, don't have that opportunity. Now you're doing the podcast, listen to Joe Shetty. I know you're a big Joe Shetty person, right? And then all of a sudden you see the wheels turning, and then you can go, okay, that's where I'm going. That's not who I am. This is not who I am now, but that's where I want to get to, right? And then slowly moving towards that.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head too. The thoughts, the thoughts are so important, and they're a big part of our program. Elevate the thoughts, and there's this thing about positive thinking, and most of our thoughts are negative.
Yep,
and it's taking control of that. And so for me, this positive thinking, for me, it's more about minimizing complaining, minimizing criticism, judgment, all of those low-level emotions that you have and that you take part in, and trying to see the good in people and see the good in situations. And to me, that's what positive thinking is more about. It's not about just being happy all the time, because, hey, let's face it, that's unsustainable.
Yep. I try to look at with all the sun, like they say, with all the sun, you can't appreciate the other things, right? You got to have the good and the bad, but you got to be able to be taught how to take the negative with the positive, right? Yeah. And that reinforces a lot of that sort of stuff as we go through our lives. So talk me about the brand that you stood up. I'm not going to try and butcher the name again, and apologize for that. The brand you stood up and where that started. And I know you originally started with like taking city kids out into the wild. I don't want to say wild. Let's go out into the bush and trying to get them more centered and back to Mother Earth. Talk me through that initial stages of that.
Yeah, well, look, about 6 months into this, I was feeling amazing, and I was getting mentoring myself.
Yep.
And my mentor asked me, what is it that you truly want out of life? Where's that direction, like you talk about? Where are you headed? Who's the person that you want to become? And through my own study, because I found that study and learning was something that I hadn't done a lot of. And it's so hugely important to keep growing and to get out of that comfort zone. And I found through his help was to be of service and to help people is probably one of the best things that we could possibly do. Like yourself, putting out these good messages and helping people, because there's someone out there's listening to your podcast and probably in a position like I was, and you're changing lives. So there's no better feeling than that. So I decided that I was going to resign from my job. I had a coaching program that I had tucked away, but I had a vision of giving back to the rangatahi, because I'd looked at my whakapapa and I'd seen some really, some pretty hard things happen to my family in the past, with colonization. And so I decided that I'd spent my life being resentful a lot of the time, being angry, and I wasn't going to take part in that anymore. I've done with that, And so I decided that what I'd do is I'd uplift and inspire the rangatahi, and I'd start there. Like, I have a massive vision, and this is just the start of it. And how am I going to do that? So I started doing, workshops, learning about starting a business, if you like, and taking it like that, because, I had to, like you just said, brand and all this stuff. So I've learned a lot along the way. And I decided that Te Kaiārahi was going to be my vehicle to get a start, and I was going to give back to the rangatahi. When I put my resignation in, like everyone was like, wow, what are you doing? Are you okay? And at the fire service, I left on really good grounds. And but they were really concerned for me. A lot of people were. My family was like, what are you going to do? Why are you giving up this job? It's secure, and I could have done another 30 years, 20 years in there. But I wanted to give back, and I knew that by resigning, I'd give myself no option. There's no fallback or anything. I was going to make this work, and I needed that. And what I did is I used social media as marketing, and I started putting these videos out of me walking in the bush, talking about goal setting, creating a vision, talking about giving back to the rangatahi. And I put all this stuff out, and that was quite big for me to do that. I come from a small community. And it was way out of left field. I've gone from being down the RSA one moment, and next thing I'm walking around in the bush holding this camera saying, your imagination is one of the best tools you can have, And so my family and friends were concerned, and they said, look, how can you help? And that came from a place of love and care. And I thought about, what are my strengths? Instead of just focusing on the obstacles. What are my strengths? What can I do? And I put it down to, like, my strengths are I live at Piha. That's a huge one. I'm right by the Ngahere, the bush, and then right by the coast. So that was huge. I was the manager of the New Zealand junior surf team, so I've worked with rangatahi. So there's another strength. Obviously my time in the fire service, that's another strength. Leadership roles and all that has helped me in a big way. And then my biggest strength of all is I'm Maori, and my te ao Maori, and my tikanga, and my te reo Maori. And so I'm not an expert, but manakitanga, whanaungatanga, and kotahitanga, they all have an underlying theme of unity, love, understanding, looking after each other, working together for a common goal. So Te Kaiārahi came to life, and I veer off a little bit, but sorry.
Keep going.
Dave actually saw one of my videos, and, he said, look, come up. I like what you're doing. There was some concern around the village, what's going on with this guy? And so Dave invited me up, and he said, look, what's going on? I told him what I was doing, my vision. I said that I've been using this goal setting program and this formula, and it had been really helping me. I shared it with him, and he liked it, and he shared it with some of his athletes. And then about a couple of weeks later, he said, look, I want to start these calm under pressure workshops. I'm running a prototype. I want you to come have a karakia, welcome everyone, and then do your goal setting presentation. So I did that. That was the first calm under pressure, and it was nerve-wracking. And so, it's for Sports New Zealand. I looked around, the people coming in, Hamish Carter was there, and it was quite daunting, but I got through that. I used social media to put my message out there, and then about a week later, I got a call from Hoani Waititi, the principal, called me in, had a meeting with all of their kaiako, and then they agreed, we're going to send some rangatahi to you. So about 3.5 months after I resigned, I had my first group of rangatahi.
Awesome. How was that feeling?
It was amazing. It was daunting as well,
Petrified?
Eh?
Scared, petrified?
Yep. Yeah, all of that stuff. And I've had to overcome that. Dave talks about embracing the stress.
Yes.
And so
But Dave's a different human being, right? Dave's a different human being, right?
He is. And I've been terrified. And I've been terrified multiple times, doing presentations, getting up, going to meetings and talking to people. And, it's been something that I haven't done a lot of. But I've invested in myself, and I've done workshops around communication, around presenting. and I'm learning, and I want to develop the skill of communicating, storytelling, and it's something that I'm really interested in, something that I love. Yeah,
it's so you know, when you said about freaking out and you're scared, and I teach my daughter as well sometimes with her sport and stuff that they get overwhelmed in that, and I sit them and say to them, if you're worried or you're scared of that, it shows that you actually care. We forget our body works in weird ways if we're paying attention to it. So by being scared, it's not a caveman being scared. It's actually that we're scared of making a mistake or scared of actually doing something wrong because we actually care about what we are actually doing. As much as a teenager's going to turn around and go, I don't really care, right? And getting that all of those sort of issues. But as we get older and realize that is that if you go on stage, like, you know, I do keynotes and I've had the privilege to be able to do a few of those over the last few years or do events, and if I ever meet someone, they go, oh, no, I don't get stressed, or, you know, I don't worry and that sort of stuff, I call BS on it. Because either A, they don't really care, because if you care, you're always going to have that small portion and you feed off that energy, right? And it's just the tools that you've got to learn to go, okay, it's consuming me. How do I now just control it to actually use it as positive energy, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, also something really true in the calm under pressure workshops. A lot of what you guys yourself and Dave does, and I always spoke about it when Dave was on the show. There's that famous video of when, obviously with Izzy, one of the first ones they came out, and he was, I don't know if you might have actually been there, and it was down at the beach when they had to go under the water for as long as possible till you couldn't breathe anymore, and then step up and be calm. And I remember saying, I think Guy remembered coming out of the water, I would go like, I'm going to fucking die, right? And Izzy stood up and his mouth didn't open and he was as calm as can be, but totally stressed, body stressed and everything, and taking the control, you know, with yourself. And as you guys going through all that, it's the learning.
Yeah.
Don't get rid of the stress.
No.
Learn how to handle it, right?
Yeah. And it's like anything, even with the dangers that are out at Piha and along the coast, you learn about them. How can you keep yourself safe? And the more you learn, the better you come with, the better you are at dealing with those risks. It's because what is the major fear of getting up and talking in front of people? And you're right, it's the fear of failing, it's the fear of looking stupid, it's the fear of being misunderstood. And I've made peace with the fact that a lot of people are going to misunderstand me, and that's okay. You know, that's okay as long as there's one person out there that I might connect with and help. Then I just focus on that. And if I take myself out of the equation too, because it's quite egotistical, like you're worried about yourself, you know, that you're going to look stupid. But I'm willing to put myself out there, and you know, it's for a good cause, and I know that what I'm doing, I believe in, and if I've got to get up there and look like a fool occasionally, then I'm going to do it.
So I just want to touch base on, so obviously a lot of the workshops you do a lot of with the youth, right? You do with the Maori youth and coming out and that. And we've seen in society at the moment, we've got obviously big challenges in New Zealand, specifically in teenagers and around mental health and all those other problems, right? What do you see? I'd love to know what you've seen with some of the youth that you're working on, the challenges that they are coming to you with. As an open, like when you've got a group of youth that are around you, what are you seeing in our society that you might be accustomed to it now? Done quite a few workshops, but in the beginning, what was the sort of stuff going, holy crap, why is a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, why is that a worry or problem? You know, that shouldn't exist. Like sometimes we're in a society now that our kids are sometimes over worried or overstimulated or over problematized. Like they should just be kids. They shouldn't have these challenges. What is the sort of stuff that you see across the youth?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, working with Woody as well, with the Calm Under Pressure, we're getting a big range of people. Yeah. And it's not just the kids. Yeah. It's everyone. Yeah. We live in a world where there's unprecedented stress. It's pretty tough out there, and there's so many different levels to it. You know, what we're eating, not getting enough sleep, not breathing properly, you know, dehydrated, not thinking well, you know, we need to raise the thoughts, not getting enough exercise. So there's a whole range of different problems. There's a lot of levels to it. And the main thing that I do when the kids come to me is just try and build some trust. I want to build some trust, and I want to try and get them to question some of their thought patterns and try and elevate them. And I think, a lot of them, and I know this was a problem for myself, direction. Where am I headed? And that's a big ask for a young person. I work with a lot of high achievers, and I work with a lot of kids that have got some major challenges ahead. They all love getting into nature. They all love stripping it back. You can't take your cell phone out for a swim. When we're in the waves and they're swimming or surfing or they're on the boogie boards, they're in the moment. We can stop the noise for a little bit. One of the things that we hand out a questionnaire after they come, and one of the big the feedback we get the most is they love the breath work. And it's crazy because when I first suggest it, they look at me like, wow, what is this guy on about,
People, again, I spoke with Dave when he was on the show. I've also had another friend, Gareth Edwards, who's a high-performance breathing coach, been around for many, many years as well. People don't understand. I've been lucky in my family that we are nasal breathers, and it's something I've been pretty proud of because a lot of people are mouth breathers you see in society, and there's all the literature on how to shift your jaw, and, you would be well aware around the difference between nasal and mouth breathing. People don't realize how that simple change, it's not like, okay, go run 10 Ks a day, you're going to be a healthy person, but just fundamentally breathing nasally, the drastic difference you can do in your day-to-day life compared to mouth breathing and all the rest of it is so vast. But it is such a weird thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to make you eat this random fruit that no one's ever known about, and that's what they look at it, right? And you tell them, they're like, what the fuck, I'm going to do that. It's like, it sounds stupid. And then they go through it and they go, oh, okay, cool. No, it's not stupid anymore. Now I'm going to tell the next person, right? It's such a weird way around that breathing stuff, and it's hopefully becoming more mainstream, which we are seeing, but hopefully it's adapted more as well in people's day-to-day lives. The sports stars, obviously going back to Izzy, which was 283, whichever one it was, that he did the whole fight with his mouth closed. People can't understand how can you go 25 minutes with not opening your mouth fundamentally because you just breathed, controlled it right.
Yeah, and having someone like Israel who does it, and he's a champion of it. It's a big push for the kids. They see that, they see Kaikara doing it, they see all of those guys doing it, and they want to do it. And it's a big part of what gets them into it from when they come to me, and they're kind of like looking at me. And I think we've kind of lost our way quite a lot, in quite a big way, where I'm the one, they're looking at me like I'm kind of a little bit fruity because I'm telling them to do this. But actually, this is thousands and thousands of years old. And for me, the biggest benefit is controlling the mind and resting it a little bit. And just, and that's tough. That's tough to quieten the mind. And we're getting all these thoughts coming in. And when I share the breath exercises with the rangatahi, some of them say, I've never felt like that before. And there's a difference between doing it. Let's say we did it in this room here, or we went out to a waterfall and did it under the water next to a waterfall, or we did it on the beach lying in the black sand after a swim. You're going to really feel that, and they connect and they know what it's about. And it's been, I've been extremely lucky on this path. Some really fortunate things have happened, and the more I've opened up, the more that people have come to me as well and helped me. And at the start there, people were looking at me like, well, is he okay? And Dave was the one that really understood me. And so, it's been just an absolute pleasure working with him.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're doing some amazing work out there, and anyone else that can find your art out there, it's pretty cool. One more question I'm going to ask you out, and this one's going to go down a bit of this could be a bit of a bomb to throw it out. I'm real interested because I know you spoke about your own challenges growing up and having that whole, obviously being Maori in New Zealand, there's that whole colonization component to it, and a bit of the, and the story behind that. Obviously, I'm South African. I grew up on the other side of that coin, seeing that whole control. What are you still seeing? Are you still seeing these challenges in our youth today in the Maori community, that there's still a bit of those challenges? I know growing up as a kid, because I grew up on the other side of the coin, I had a very strong opinion till I actually learned how things work in the world. And it doesn't matter who or what or how you look and you function, it's all coming together, right? Are we still seeing it in our youth today? Unfortunately, there's a bit of that growing up with still their challenges of colonization stuff that's happened over 100 years ago or furthest. Apologies for the wrong timing. That they're growing up and still having a challenge with the community because they're not like them or see like them or are perceived like them.
I think there's some massive challenges out there, and for me, I need to be that difference and make that change in myself. My destiny wasn't to be a pisshead. That wasn't on the cards for me, and it's up to me to change that. And so to leave that identity behind and to create a new one. And so I want to stand up and give these young people, these rangatahi, something to look at and say, hey, I want to aspire to that.
Yep.
All of my nephews, I want them to know that you can change. It's never too late to change. We don't need to be addicted to all this external stuff. And actually, as Maori, we're already miles ahead in a lot of ways. So we've got a lot of strengths, and I just want to see more Maori role models step up and change. And if we can get enough of us to change, then we can influence the rangatahi coming through and showing them a new way. Because look, and I'm not sitting here pointing the finger at anyone, but it's a mess. Yeah, it's a real mess.
I totally is. Like I was saying, I grew up in it and I can understand it and everything else. Obviously, I was on the other side. But I look back at the society in South Africa and it's still a mess now. And, I don't think there's ever a way out of how rule and control that from, that will ever change in society. And that's a problem because we've got youth growing up, right? And we've got a community growing up there, and that still utilize that in the wrong way and shouldn't be, and it should be, and they should be looking at what makes me, what makes my tribe, and use that to empower, not to be, against something else.
Yeah, we just gotta give them some hope. And so the thing for myself is I can't focus on all that stuff because it's way too overwhelming. Yeah, the problem's huge. And it's not just my problem. It's not just your problem. It's all of our problem. And we've all got to do something. So, you might be sitting there thinking, what can I do? Well, we can start by elevating our thoughts. Start by seeing the good in people. It's just that easy. Just elevate everything around. And the example you show, they're looking at us for that example, so I can only be the change in the world that, the change I want to see, I have to be it. So I want to come from a place of love, understanding, and compassion. I've done resentment. I've done anger, blaming everyone, and hey, just because I work in the space with Dave and the stuff that I do, I'm not immune to any of it. And this stuff is a lifetime of discovery. Yep. I'm not sitting here saying that I've got all the answers. I can only do what I can do. And I want to have a positive impact in the world. And I've got a clear, definite plan, a vision, and every day I'm going to do a few things to get there. And being on this podcast today is a step in that direction.
Awesome. As we get in sort of to the end of today's show and everything, is there anything else you want to leave our audience with, a sort of a thought or a vision or sort of a direction for themselves to take home with?
Yeah, look, I just want to say, if you are out there and you are struggling, you can change. There's a lot of people out there that are doing it tough, and it's about changing those thought patterns. And we do a gratefulness practice. And even if you have to strip it right back to I'm grateful for this breath, if your world's that hard and you have to go right back to the hierarchy of everything, which is the breath, then do that. And I want to challenge you and say, if you can do that, then you can think as well. And if you can think, you can elevate your thoughts and you can get out of that situation. And I know that you can because I've done it. I know that it's not that easy, but I thought I needed a whole lot of external stuff to make me feel good and to get me to a certain place. but it was the internal work. And I never really understood that for a long time. You know, what is the internal work? But, you know, you can go deep inside yourself. And, you know, a lot of the things that I encourage, you don't, all of us can do it.
Yeah.
Like raising the thoughts, like the breath work, hydration, nutrition, all of this stuff, getting out into nature, being part of a community. We're supposed to be part of a community. That's how it works. I know this from the workshops I do with Dave, that people are isolated. So if you are there isolated, if you can, get around some people if you can, you know. It's that's how we were made. We were made to be in a community. But if you are struggling, I just say, you know, take a breath, and, you know, if I can change, I think anyone can. So yeah, I just want to send that message out there.
It's amazing, and thank you so much for sharing your message today. And I'm hoping from the audience that's listening or watching, they can take something from it and that resonates to them. So where can the last things, where can people find you? How can they reach out to you?
We've got a website, Te Kaiārahi.co.nz, or we're on Instagram, and you can find us there, send us a message. We're getting a lot of messages, and there's a lot of people out there, and we want to get it to a point where we can run some free workshops, you know, where we can get, because I'm getting a lot of messages from a lot of people saying, hey, my nephew or I know this kid that would benefit from coming out. And at the moment we're building, and we're just trying to get to a place where we can put on a workshop, you know, every now and then for these kids that really don't have the support around them, and just get them out to us. And yeah.
That's something interesting. I've got a group of people that look to try and help community by being willing to donate money. So let's have a little chat off air about that, and maybe my community can help your community to put on a free event for the youth that's needing it.
That would be amazing. So, I'd love that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, because we've got my group at the moment is a bit itchy, looking for something, and so we're looking for something that's true and respectful and stuff. And I would love to put this forward as an option. Yeah,
that'd be amazing. And yeah, I mean, look, we're trying to build this. We're building a team, and we're getting good people around us, and we've got you know, some really amazing people that are involved, and I want to say thank you to them. And you know, like, there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are helping as well, and that's just been amazing. So it hasn't just all been me, and I want to build this so that we have a culture that where people love coming to work, and, you know, having a positive impact on the world. And yeah, I want to build something really beautiful, and head in this direction of this big vision, and, you know, the sky's the limit.
No, awesome. Thanks so much, Jemarl, for that. And, you know, to everyone else, thanks again for coming over to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast. I hope there's something from today's show that resonates with yourself, for yourself, or for someone else. As I say at the end of the show, I don't care about, you know, saying like or subscribe to my show. I care about you taking something away that can make you a different and better person, or someone else that you know that could take something away from it, especially from what the message is about today, about finding what is important to yourself, what is true to yourself and your community and your tribe, and just going out there and, you know, let's just make a better world. We live in a society at the moment that's just too much noise, too much shit. We need to make a difference, but we can do it all by just actually caring about each other and just moving forward. But as always, thanks for coming over to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast, and hope to see you again.